Hey, everybody, welcome to Game Breaking News with me, Jeff Grubb, your host from GiantBomb.com. Thank you for tuning in. On this episode, we're going to be talking about another classic console making a comeback, and a former PlayStation executive has hidden treasures in his cupboard. We also have Emma Fyffe on the show today, so it's going to be a good one. Let's get right into it by saying hi to Emma Fyffe. Emma, how are you doing?
Hey, I am great. I was on my honeymoon, which was delayed after
Yay.
my actual wedding. And we were in Thailand for over 2 weeks. It's not Monday, chat. No. I'm here on a Thursday.
It's
What day?
honorary Monday, everybody.
Honorary.
Just
Honestly,
work the next 5 days.
I don't know what time it is,
Of course
where
not.
I am. Like I crossed something like 6 time zones and the international date line. So I'm just like, I genuinely, I woke up in the middle of the night last night because my stomach was like, it's time to have lunch. Like,
Oh no.
I'm so messed up right now. But yeah.
I mean, here's the
But
thing. We've all been at home not traveling, and we've all stopped caring about that stuff as well. And what's the point
exactly.
anymore?
What's the
So,
point?
yeah.
Exactly. Yeah.
Well, I'm glad that you had a good trip. It sounds like it was a
I
good time.
did. Yeah, it was awesome. I stayed at an elephant sanctuary for part of it, and I got to like feed elephants, and elephants came to our little like bungalow that we were staying in
That's
at breakfast
fantastic.
time every morning, and we got to feed them their breakfast. So it was rad.
Did you play any of Indiana Jones last year? Because that has one thing that takes place in
No,
that region. So okay,
no, I
that's
did not.
I'm definitely someone who
Yeah,
like will play a game, learn about a place a little bit, not a ton. I'm not a learner. Everybody, I think we've
sure,
established that.
sure.
But I'll learn a little. I'll get a little curious, and so it
Yeah,
will make me want to explore certain things once I travel to these places. So
totally.
now
Yeah.
that you've traveled there, though, maybe you could play that
I
game and
could
get
play
some.
Indiana Jones. Well, I will say that, the current season of White Lotus takes place in Thailand, in Koh
That's
Samui. We did
right.
not go to Koh Samui, but we did when we were in Phuket decide to not go to the island that we were going to go to because just we were moving around so much, and we're like, it's going to take 4 hours to get to this island on a boat. Like, let's just stay in Phuket. And so because it was super last minute, I was like, I'm into the idea of like staying at a nice resort. So we like literally stayed at a 5-star resort in Phuket for, I don't know, like $200 a night. And yeah, I
Yeah,
was
that's awesome.
living my White Lotus fantasy for a couple
That's
of days.
fantastic.
A lot less murder.
Okay,
So that was good.
well, but hopefully a lot more Sam Rockwell. I mean,
Yeah, I wish.
yeah, I wish for that
Yeah.
for everybody. We all deserve more Sam Rockwell in our lives. All right, let's explain what we do here. Most weekdays, I, Jeff Grubb, will help piece your gaming life back together. That includes breaking news and maybe even some of our own original reporting. For all these topics, I'll get the input of a bona fide expert who will make me look smart. If you were watching live on Twitch, welcome. You can always listen to the show later on podcast feeds by searching for Game Breaking News or find the RSS on giantbomb.com. You can also catch the show later with chapters and timestamps on YouTube. Hello, YouTube. All right, we have a lot to get into, so let's break some gaming news, starting with another FPGA N64 gets teased by this time by a dystopian weapons merchant. A soul patch on legs tweeted a misunderstanding of the Matrix to try to get people to buy his new FPGA N64 instead of analogs, which got delayed. That human flip-flop that someone left in the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle ooze previously released the mod Retro Chromatic, which is an FPGA Game Boy Color. Now it seems like he is going to be actually releasing something called the M64, which is probably going to be the equivalent, but for the Nintendo 64. It was a pretty embarrassing post because it's just like, join me down the rabbit hole. But I think we're in a space now where we're going to get quite a few of these. We didn't get any details from what I described here as what if the word milady got turned into a person. He did not have pricing or release date or anything. Seems like he was just trying to capitalize on the fact that the analog 3D is what they call it, got delayed till July. And so he's like, oh, let's hop in now, tell people we're making one of those. So maybe they'll hold off on buying the analog 3D and get mine instead. I'm all for more of these things coming back, although I'm personally just not going to buy the one from the guy making AI missiles for the government,
Yeah.
especially because it's like he's the one that like is teaming up with GameStop because he's friends with Ryan Cohen, who is a nightmare person himself, the current CEO of GameStop. So it's like, oh yeah, two shitheads working together to kind of corner this space a little bit. I'm not interested.
Yeah.
But I think we are at least at a point where someone with a little bit of interest in this space can start up one of these companies. And I think I welcome more competition overall, but I'm going to be turning to someone like Taki Udon on YouTube, who is making a bunch of these. He's making the PS1 equivalent of these. And I'm very happy to see this continue to grow. Do you have any interest in old FPGA consoles, or you kind of wait until maybe they get more powerful, or
I think
PS2?
yeah. I mean, again, it's like here's the thing: is the FPGA consoles is I'm totally with you that at the end of the day, they are emulators. And
Hardware emulators, but yes,
hardware emulators. Yeah, exactly. And I came into the emulation scene pretty early on, using emulators on like a Super Nintendo emulator on the PC when I was a kid, because we didn't have a Super Nintendo, and it was beyond Super Nintendo's era at that point. We were already into the PlayStations, the N64s. We might have even been on the cusp of like PS2 at that point that my brother and I were using this emulator. So it's like this stuff is all fair game, but and in this case, as you say, it is actually emulating the hardware itself so that you can play the games that you can play, like the physical games, rather than like running ROMs of the games on the emulator. But yeah, I mean, it's cool. I think it's fair game for the open market to be able to do whatever they want, and ultimately, somebody is going to do it the best. And this is one of the positive things of the free market, is that competition does lead to people innovating.
And you have to make a cool one of these, right?
Exactly.
You have to actually,
100%.
You kind of can't. It can't be like it was in mid 2000s where we were getting the Retron 5, and it worked, but it was kind of janky and crappy and cheap materials, and it just didn't feel very good to use, and the interface was crappy. But it was the only option if you wanted to just have a cheap one of these things you could plug any cartridge into, or maybe do some hacking to play off of an SD card or something like that. And it was cool for the time, but now we have come a long way, and because there is so much interest in this and there is money to be made, a company like Analog can just full-time employ someone from the scene of producing these FPGA cores, which I mean, a quick explanation. I always feel like I should explain FPGA. Hardware emulation just means there's a field programmable gate array chip. That's what FPGA stands for. And you could just tell that chip to behave in a certain way to mimic the behavior of something like a Nintendo 64. That's what the MiSTer device is all about. Now, these companies are making their productized version of it so they could sell it to consumers, and it's a little bit different than the open source projects that the MiSTer is, but there's some benefits there, like having a full-time employee of Kevtris, who is the guy that is a savant at creating these cores, and he's getting paid to do this work, which is, I think we all benefit from that in the long run. He often puts out his work as like jailbroken source code later, so that's where the benefit comes from. But so I enjoy that, and then also I do think like this Analog 3D looks very cool. They do a really good job with the materials and stuff like that. And then the Superstation from Taki Udon, which is the PlayStation 1 equivalent, same thing. They just look so handsome, and that like they feel like they could capitalize on this because there is so much nostalgia and so much interest in these things. And like you said, more competition in the space is probably going to lead to even better innovations and improvements and lower prices. And maybe they buy enough of these FPGA chips that the companies that produce the FPGA chips say, okay, well, let's start a new round of more powerful FPGA processors that can eventually lead to a world where we do get the equivalent for a PS2 or a GameCube or a Dreamcast, which are all a bit too much for the current crop of FPGA chips that are achievable to be acquired by these companies. There probably are powerful enough chips, but not ones that are affordable enough. These are all pretty expensive. And for a while there, they like the MiSTer was using a subsidized one. I think Intel was that company was subsidizing the chip so people would get used to using these things. And it's like if that subsidy ever went away, they wouldn't be able to do this stuff anymore, unless, we make so many of them that the scaling begins to kick in. And that's the hope with all of these devices. So I continue to be very interested in these things, even as I find other ways to play old games, Emma. I mean,
Yeah,
there's a million
totally.
ways to do that now. I'm using my
Yes, there
Steam
are.
Deck still. I'm
Yep.
using I'm using emulators on the PC still. I use
Mhm.
RetroArch like once a week at least.
Mhm.
I'm buying shoot hardware. I'm buying the real hardware, and I got a RetroTink
Right.
on the way, the RetroTink 4K CE, which is an upscaler. I'm planning to plug the real
Yeah.
N64 I got right back here, and the GameCube, and the PS1 that I just got out because I have to play Overblood next week. So there's a lot of ways for me to play old games, but I
Yeah.
think this work still is important, and I think it's maybe one of the easier ways to get a really good version of the N64 because N64
Yes.
emulation actually is still kind of problematic.
Yeah, and the other thing too that I sort of think about this in terms of kind of the future of where this goes is if you do end up with a market where you have all of these really good FPGA driven hardware and you're able to play the physical copies of the old games, does that then put pressure on the companies who originally published the games? Would it perhaps revive their interest in preserving these games? Because it is a real issue that there are so many video games that unless you have some sort of hardware and a physical copy of the game and the hardware that can run it, it is lost to time.
Yep.
So and also there's sort of the interesting side of the used game market, which is the Japanese used game market, where they're a lot less because like I feel like in the US a lot of the time the used game market is very much like a collector's market.
Yeah.
And in
Very
Japan,
true.
the same is true. However, they're not as like precious about it. Like basically you can go to any given sort of game store in Japan, of course, Super Potato being a super famous one of them that, has these retro games and if they're not in like some nice pristine collector condition, like if they just basically exist as a game, they're not expensive to buy. And
Yeah.
so if you have the hardware that can run it, I mean, obviously the games would be in Japanese. So yeah, I'm curious to see like how this influences the retro games market and just the general preservation of retro games overall.
Yeah. It took the Nintendo and Sega and those companies quite some time before they hopped
Mhm.
on the very cheap computer that can emulate old game consoles and just turn that into a product. They were 5 to 10 years behind, maybe longer.
Mhm.
It's like when that would have made sense, and they're like, okay, finally now these companies are like, oh, it is $5 for one of these chips that we could put in a box that looks like an old NES, and then we just put, you know, 500 megabytes of storage, cold storage
Yep.
on this thing, put the games on there, and we got something that we could build for $15 that we could sell for $100.
Yep.
And FPGA is a long way away from that. But
Mhm.
again, it is a process as these things become more popular, more common in devices. If it does hit a certain scale, in 10 years, this current crop of like FPGA could get to a point where it does make sense for Nintendo to be like, okay, now we will do the N64 equivalent of the NES and SNES micro consoles that we made.
Yep.
And that would, I'm all in favor of that. But, like in
Yeah.
the meantime, as you say, like, what do they do to set themselves apart when they are doing their own retro offerings? I think they've kind of tapped out what they could do with what they've established as their retro games so far. It kind of feels
Mhm.
like they need to start adding, for the Switch 2 at least, adding other options in there. I would still be kind of surprised if they did GameCube, despite the fact that those rumors have been out there that they've
I know.
considered it. I, I mean, I'm just of two minds about that. It could happen. I would just still
Mhm.
be surprised because I think they want to sell us GameCube games still individually that they remaster. But there's probably a lot of GameCube games that aren't really on the table for that. There's like middle of the road ones. They're like, we're not going to remake Mario Golf, the GameCube one,
Right,
because
right.
we're
Yeah.
just gonna make a new game or a new Mario Golf.
Right.
So
Yep.
maybe they like put those kinds of games end up in that sort of thing. But again, I would just kind of be shocked. But that, like, they have nowhere else left to go to like really sort of beef up the Nintendo Switch Online retro offerings, right? So then they might have to get into
Yeah.
that game, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah,
We'll see. I'm
yeah, as you
hopeful.
say, it's it it all is positive. I don't really see any bad side to this particular practice.
Yes, right. And
You know?
it's there's always the question of like, oh, is this legal? Yeah, remaking
Mhm.
the hardware is covered under patent, not copyright. If there was
Yep.
any like copyrighted code in there, that would be a little bit different, but that's just not how
Yeah.
these older consoles generally work. And then you could also reverse engineer things like the BIOS in a clean room and make all that stuff legal. And you could thank
Yeah.
the early like Windows, IBM PC compatible lawsuits that happened way back then for all of that. That's why we get all this good stuff.
Yep.
All right, yep. Let's move ahead. Although I'll keep an eye on the M64. I'll be interested to just see how like where the price comes in. For the chromatic, it was about $200. It was pretty close to an analog, the analog pocket. And the analog pocket has more features than the chromatic. So I wonder if I bet the same thing happens here, where this is about the same price. They make it look really handsome. And then the feature set is a little bit more limited than the analog equivalents, which have like open FPGA that or some of the devices do, that you could put other cores on. So you could emulate other consoles on your like pocket, for example, which can do a bunch of stuff. And chromatic just can't. All right, Plants vs. Zombies Reloaded has been rated in Brazil. This comes from Mustafa Mahmoud at Kit Guru. As discovered by the publication Gamatsu, a new game listed as Plants vs. Zombies Reloaded has appeared on the Brazilian ratings board, said to be coming to PS5, Xbox Series consoles, Switch, PC, iOS, and as well as Android. Little else can be gleaned from the listing currently. Plants vs. Zombies Reloaded, it says, interestingly, for the game, while the PS5, Xbox Series, and Switch would be getting the classic for the first time, Plants vs. Zombies has been available on PC since 2009 and on iOS and Android since 2010 and 11, respectively. That said, the current version is rife with ads and various in-app purchases, and so hopefully the Reloaded release serves as a nice way to play the original Plants vs. Zombies with little to no interruptions at a reasonable price. I really enjoyed Plants vs. Zombies, and it is a franchise that has a very huge global audience. It really caught on in China. It was very popular in China. So I've been surprised that they haven't done more with it. Do you think this is like the like a gesture, like a sort of let's just do something with Plants vs. Zombies to keep it somewhat relevant, or do you think this is at the start of them like, hey, let's go all out on this series again and maybe get another one of the shooters that were like surprisingly popular and things like that?
I think what this is like a dipping the toe in the water to see if they garner a new audience. Because again, right. It's like, like as you say, mobile gaming in general is incredibly popular basically everywhere except the US. It's gaining popularity in the US, but in a lot of other countries, mobile gaming is it.
It's the default, and
yeah, 100%. And Plants vs. Zombies, again, like I didn't really play it myself, but I certainly was aware of it peripherally. I saw a lot of ads for it, and I knew that there was this incredibly dedicated global audience. Now, I like the idea of it. I think it looks like the art is cute, and it seems like it is, one of the more solid mobile titles that was in kind of that earlier crop of saying, oh, okay, well, these mobile games are truly video games. Like I am somebody that I'm a huge proponent of. If you play the, New York Times Spelling Bee or Wordle or Connections, like those are video. You're playing games.
I saw BDG on Instagram making that argument, Brian David Gilbert, and getting shut down. And I wanted to rush to his defense and say, absolutely, Wordle is a video game. Absolutely. Yeah, he said, what's the other, the Fitbit? That's a video game. Yes, he's right.
It's a video game. He's totally right.
He's totally right. It's go check out what's the show called that they were having that conversation on, Emma? Actually go look up that clip on Instagram or just go watch the show, everybody.
Yeah, it's a great show. Stay tuned later this season. Myself and Bailey Myers are on the same episode.
It's already my favorite episode. I haven't seen it yet, and I can't wait.
It was a blast.
We had
a really good time. But yeah, I mean, again, it's like I think that now that the mobile games market is getting more respect in the US, why not try again with Plants vs. Zombies and put it in such a form that it's like, okay, I can pay $20 and just play this game. Because that was a lot of my frustration with some mobile games that I did try to get into. I have huge issues with the creator of this series. She should have just tweeted every once in a while, Hagrid hopes all the little witches and wizards have a great summer, and just shut up.
That would have been much better.
Yeah, it would have been much better. But there was this Harry Potter mobile game, I remember, that it took place before Harry Potter was at Hogwarts, and you were a witch wizard whose like brother was in some kind of trouble, blah blah blah. Like I remember Nymphadora Tonks was like of your age. You were like in the same kind of like class era as her. But you made your own original Harry Potter character and it was super fun. But you had to like earn gems to play more. And I was like, can I just pay somebody $20 and play this game instead of having to like wait for stuff to regenerate? And I don't even think they had the option of in-app purchases. So if you are going to make mobile games in such a way that they can function like a Nintendo Switch game in that I can just buy it and play it, that is interesting to me. I mean, we talked about this a little bit with Animal Crossing Pocket Camp coming back and how it's like, yeah, I'm going to pay for the promotional deal just in case I want to get into that.
Yep,
because
no, I just have it for $10.
Yeah, exactly. Yep.
It's I think I'm with you that this the sense I get here is that this will be more of a console game that they are also releasing on mobile than a mobile game that they're also releasing on console. And by that I mean, I think we're going to be able to just pay for this game and it won't have all the microtransactions. Or if it does, they won't be as in your face with the advertisements and things like that. It'll be toned down so that it can feel more like what PopCap games originally were, which were video games released on the PC. I think it's the history there is a little bit muddled because I do associate Plants vs. Zombies with mobile. But no, it came out on PC first.
I know.
Just like Peggle. These were casual PC games that had a huge audience among like the hardcore gaming crowd. And we were worried about, I remember at the time, like talking when Jeff Green went to go work at PopCap. I had a conversation with him at PAX where like, come on, man, these games that you're now making for mobile, you guys are going to go crazy with microtransactions, right? And he's like, he kind of like danced around it, but that's exactly what happened.
Yeah.
And now PopCap is this mostly forgotten thing among the crowd that once really cared about it because they just haven't made games for us in a long time. So I think the hope here is that take Plants vs. Zombies, the game that we had back then, remaster it and release it as a, quote unquote, real video game with a premium price. And I think that we would all welcome the return of that. And, do Peggle next. Let's do Peggle. And Peggle 2, Peggle Knights, do a collection, a big Peggle HD collection. I think that could also hit very hard as well. And then do a new Peggle that brings in some of these new features that have happened in a lot of the Peggle-like since then, where it's like, let's turn them into RPGs and things like that. I mean, there's space for EA to do more with PopCap, clearly. And I hope they could sort of walk this fine line of taking these casual games, making them appeal to the audience that once loved them, while still making enough money, I guess, to justify them without crossing that line into every 30 seconds you're getting an ad. Because most people aren't going to pay for this game. I don't know if that's the world we live in, but I'm glad they're trying, even if we're maybe talking about the most hopeful version because they have not officially announced this and we don't know the details yet.
I feel like the Gen Z kids, they must all know some way to hack around the various ads that you get in these games because they are just pros at not paying for stuff.
Yeah, so you could use like your like a retro Pi, like the Raspberry Pi to like turn into a Pi hole and capture all ads that like so when it like sends out a call for ads like in the app, it'll just it'll reach nothing and it will return back. Now this breaks some games. Or like I have this set up on my kids' devices because I don't want them inundated with this stuff.
Of course, yeah.
So but then they'll hit the one button. It's like hit this button to get free gems if you just watch this 30-second ad. And they're like, Dad, this isn't working. Nothing's happening. I'm like, all right, let's just turn on the ads for a second, I guess, and then you can watch it real quick, I guess, and then I'll turn it right back off. Yeah. So it's not perfect, but I definitely recommend that.
I had so many of those games of the click on this ad and you get gems or stars or whatever it is you need to continue to play when I was babysitting for my downstairs neighbor's daughter, like, because she always wanted to play games on my phone and they were always awful mobile games. So when I would find one that didn't have ads every 30 seconds, but then she would like con me into buying her more like packs for this hair cutting game.
They love the hair cutting game.
They love the hair cutting games.
All right. Animal Crossing New Horizons turns 5 today. Mostly, I mean, nothing else was happening that week of March 20th, 2020.
Nothing. No, not at all.
This is the only anniversary that we're talking about. A crucially important game for a very weird time.
Truly.
I think the way this conversation usually goes with people is Animal Crossing: New Horizons, that game that Nintendo made and then abandoned. It's like, well, that's how they make Animal Crossing games. They make
Yeah.
them and release them, and they have some extra content, but they're never going to be live service games, or at least they have not been so far. Mostly bringing this up, Emma, because I continue to
Yes.
be like, that next game is probably not as far off as we're thinking, and
Oh
we
yeah.
could be getting a new one of these like within the next year even. Do you think that Nintendo could do, like, do you think Animal Crossing could be a launch window game for a new console?
Ooh, well, I don't know that it's gonna be that soon, but I could see it as something that we get within the first year of the new console's lifespan, because as you say, this is not really a live service kind of game. It's like, here's the game,
Right.
and, make your bells and, you unlock all of the features, and then the people who are really, really good at designing islands and are really, really patient, they continue to play and they have a great time. And I would visit their islands and be like, dang, I'm actually bad at Animal Crossing.
That's right. Same.
But yeah, but as you say, that means that does give the team behind Animal Crossing the time to be developing this. And if you think about kind of the life cycle of other games that came out at approximately the same time in 2020, i.e., Final Fantasy VII Remake, Rebirth came out last year. So it is very likely that there is a new Animal Crossing that it could be one of those. You know how Nintendo Directs a lot of the time, I think of the example of Super Mario Brothers Wonder, or the most recent Zelda game, Echoes of Wisdom, and how both of those were games that were revealed in a Nintendo Direct, and they're like, it comes out in 6 months. I
Hmm.
feel like that's what we could be getting with an Animal Crossing.
Yeah, I think we could go into this Nintendo Direct, which is 13-ish days away.
Soon, really soon, yeah.
It's, yes, within 2 weeks, and we get all the details about the Switch 2. And I think, Mario Kart definitely, I think, is the launch game for them. And if they have other launch games, I think they won't be of the biggest scale. They'll be like the 3D Mario team, almost certainly working on a game, but that could be the holiday game. But I could
Right,
see them
right.
being like, I just think there's a good chance, a strong chance
Yeah,
that they announce Animal Crossing during this direct. And it is
yeah,
for, you're right, the next 6 months to a
yep,
year. And that's sort of the window we're talking about. Not
yeah.
immediately, but I don't think they're worried about having enough consoles for that game, because what they saw
Mhm.
with Animal Crossing New Horizons is that is one of the games that sold by far the best month to
Oh,
month throughout the entirety of the Switch's life cycle.
yes.
Like,
Yes, it
better than just
did.
about any other game other than Mario Kart.
Yep.
There's a few others that would frequently outsell it, but if you kind of like do the average month to month, I think it's like probably that, maybe Zelda Breath of the Wild, and then Animal Crossing, but it's right up there.
Yeah.
And honestly, I think it's sold more than Breath of the Wild at this point. So yeah, it is
Yeah.
a massive success for them. So I think they're like, this is something that could be a perennial hit, and
Yep.
might be the kind of thing we need to like establish that blue ocean audience that we have maybe found a way to get to without having to have the gimmicks of the Wii with the Switch,
Y
which is, this is going to have family games. It's going to have games for a variety of different tastes, and that is a euphemism for women and families. And
Yeah.
Animal Crossing is like a game where it's like, okay, we can get that audience, let them know right away we have something for them, and then it will continue to sell forever. We can do bundles every holiday
Mhm.
forever. I mean, I just, it feels like one of those games that is super crucial to them selling a Switch 2 and making it a success out of the gate
Oh,
for them,
yeah.
or at least making the promise that it's coming soon.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, as you say, Animal Crossing is such a broad audience. I argue Animal Crossing is for everybody, but
Oh yes,
certainly there are
definitely is.
people who play Animal Crossing, and they play Animal Crossing for 800 hours, and they have those most immaculately landscaped island and perfect neighbors, and decor everywhere, and they're like, I'm a casual gamer.
Yep. Yep. Nope. Come on. You are maybe the most gamer. That's what I think of. Like, the people that play The Sims the way they do. I'm like, no, you are
Yes.
more hardcore than I am. Like, come on.
100%.
The way that you obsess over this stuff, I'm impressed.
We need a different name
Yeah.
for non-competitive gamer.
Yeah. Yeah. Like just, the self-expression gamer, like the way that they just can like go in there and really make the game their own. That to me, I continue to be more impressed by that than someone who's like really good at games. If you like
I totally agree.
a mastery over like making a game your own, that's way cooler in my opinion.
I played The Sims for 3 hours and I was like, this is deep.
Yeah.
you can go really deep into this.
I want to, a fun gamer, says Dr. Ryan. Yeah, a single issue gamers, Frantic Finesse. That's real
great.
Good. The real quick, Animal Crossing is a game from Nintendo's EPD5 team. EPD is like Entertainment and Planning Division. It's the name of all their studios. They just have a number behind them. EPD5 does Wii Sports, Splatoon, and Animal Crossing. They have a few other things, but okay. So maybe the reason Animal Crossing doesn't happen right away is actually Splatoon might be even more important to them because that is a cultural phenomenon in Japan, and they might want to have Splatoon 4 ready to go. But the last Splatoon did happen. Splatoon 3 happens like in between now and Animal Crossing Horizons, right? So I think they probably would have flipped back over to Animal Crossing.
I would agree.
In the meantime, so we'll see. Just glancing at this list I have of all the other teams and what they might be making. I wonder what the EPD4 is, which is, I wrote down here, is the Weird Team. They made Game Builder Garage, Labo, Ring Fit Adventure, and Brain Age.
That is the Weird Team.
I hope they have some real weird shit ready to go for Switch 2 launch. That honestly, that could be the team that did that online playtest MMO game that they tested for a few weeks, which I think is probably going to launch with the Switch 2 as well. I hope it does. All right, let's keep going here. I got to get back to my list. Actually, you know what? Let's take a quick break. Then we'll come back. We'll talk about Microsoft's commitment to TV and movies and a whole lot more right after this. All right, let's get right back into it. Microsoft is committed to more Xbox TV shows and movies. This is from Eddie McHugh at GameSpot. While Microsoft's Halo TV show did not become a huge success, that hasn't stopped the company from seeking to adapt its franchises for film and TV. The next release is a Minecraft movie, which comes to theaters on April 4th and looks like a hell of a thing. After that, there's season 2 of the Fallout TV show on Prime Video. Then there's a Gears of War movie and TV show. You can expect Microsoft to do even more as it relates to transmedia opportunities for Xbox franchises, Microsoft Gaming CEO Phil Spencer said. He was talking to Variety when he said all this. And I think we're at a point now, Emma, where sure, Halo didn't work. And we know it's not like, it's just it didn't vibe with people. It's like, no, we've seen what a TV show and a movie based on a video game can be, and it can be a whole bunch of different things that work. I think
sure can.
I think Sonic is very different from Mario in terms of the movie adaptations, which are very different from the Fallout TV show, which is actually even different than the Last of Us TV show. And all of those things work and for different reasons, and all of them are very, very, very successful. So Halo, compared to that, did not work. However you want to define it, did not work. But we are in a place with adaptations now where if you are a company that owns a lot of very popular video game IP, you kind of can't not be in this game, right? You have to be in the transmedia game, right? It's unignorable.
Well, that's the world that we live in. You know what I mean? And look, I'm all for mining video games for potential new IP on TV in movies rather than, and look, I understand that the reason that Disney is doing this is because they're trying to keep their like copyright on those characters, which is why they keep remaking all of their animated films. But listen to me for just a second here. Snow White was Disney's first full-length animated feature. It was their first full-length animated feature. It is an important part of cinema history.
The last live-action remake. God damn it.
100%. It should be their last live-action remake. All of their live-action remakes.
Go to prison.
Yes, they're just some bullshit. I saw somebody post something. They were like, Snow White, it's at least as good as Beauty and the Beast and The Lion King. And I'm like, so terrible. So it's bad. It's boring. It's lifeless. Everybody is dead in the eyes. So again, it's like, look, if we can do things like, so I look at Fallout as a really good example of taking something where the world is extremely interesting and the stories within the video games are just fine. They're fine.
Yep.
And what they nail is the vibe of Fallout. And so instead of trying to be like, we're going to make an accurate adaptation of these characters and blah, 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 they just go, this is an interesting world. Let's play in it. And I think that there's a lot of opportunity to do that. And then you do take something like The Last of Us that has an incredible narrative, and you just make a good adaptation of that narrative, and people are really happy. How have we fucked up Resident Evil so many times? You know, like, so again, it's like this totally makes sense to me from the point of view of Microsoft leaning into because this is one area where Microsoft can gain some ground. Obviously, they're hugely established within the PC market. They have a large contingency in the console gaming world with Xbox, even though they're really in the market of selling Game Pass, not Xboxes. But you know what? That's working for them. And so, yeah, TV. What else? Where else are they going to expand to? Novels? There's already a bunch of Halo books.
Exactly. You know? Yeah. And it's like, yeah, that has worked. So clearly it can be adapted to other mediums. All right. So, like some of the big name Microsoft or Xbox Game Studios properties, I think we could expect Bethesda stuff would easily translate. They could make an Elder Scrolls show for Prime Video, and you could just easily imagine that. But like, let's say Forza. Could you imagine a Forza show or movie, and what would that look like? So I'm like, I would take that like a USA Network Characters Welcome show, like based on people hanging out on an island, having to like trying to put together the big event and stuff like that. That could work for that.
It could totally work.
What about Sea of Thieves? What should that be?
Sea of Thieves. Oh man. Okay, so what we really need, you know what Sea of Thieves should be? It should be a really good week to week in the vibe of like a Xena warrior princess, has a good sense of humor. You know what I mean? Like an episodic show. We don't get episodic shows hardly anymore. Some sitcoms. But it would be really fun to have, just like an adventure of the week, Sea of Thieves.
That I would totally that one feels like what would actually happen is they would partner up with Mr. Beast for some reality game show or something like that. That's just Sea of Thieves themed. And you see that tweet from that man about the people he's got locked up in rooms so they can win money?
I don't look at Twitter.
Yeah, it was like, I got a pilot living in a jet for like half a year to win $500,000, and a fat person in a gym until he loses 100 pounds for $500,000. I can't wait to share these videos. I'm just like, how did we get here?
How did we get here?
We have messed up bad somewhere along the way. All right, let's keep going. Sony vet Ken Kutaragi has a Super Nintendo PlayStation sitting in his cupboard, or as Jan would have you say, cupboard. Oh no, he says clipboard and cupboard. From Jim Norman at Nintendo Life. The Super Nintendo PlayStation. It's commonly held up as one of the biggest what ifs in gaming, but this once mooted and later betrayed collaboration between Sony and Nintendo could have changed the industry landscape forever. We got a peek at the fabled crossover back in 2016 when someone dug it out of their attic. They're like, I have one of those, and no one believed him until he got it out and showed it off. And it got auctioned off for $360,000. It was a big deal. And then people have been like working on trying to get it running and things like that, trying to shoot games on it. Well, Ken Kutaragi just apparently also has one sitting in storage, and he got it out to let Canton Japan on Twitter take images of it, and you can see it right over here. It looks real nice. This thing's been
it does look nice,
preserved. Now we have seen it before though, so the one thing here is like, Kim, if anyone knows how to get this thing up and running and doing stuff with it, it's probably you. Do you have anything else? Can we plug this thing into a TV and see if it works? And I don't think we're getting that quite from him. And really, the reality is, there probably isn't enough there to actually get it to do much, even if you do get it plugged into a TV and quote-unquote working.
Say, does it have games?
It's going to have some prototype stuff, something, and that's it. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, you could probably run like Super Famicom games just through the hardware without any of the CD stuff, but God, I
God.
want as much of this like preserved as possible. So
I mean, truly my favorite story in the world is how Nintendo backstabbed Sony at CES and was like, "Actually, we're making a console with Philips."
yeah,
Sony was
Phillips.
like, "What?"
Yep. And it's we just we don't we're gonna let them like license some of our stuff, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah.
Um, and then the PlayStation happened. There you go.
And then
And
the
really,
PlayStation happened.
I mean, I don't know if history would have been all that different because the way the PlayStation was going to work, the Super
Oh,
Nintendo
yeah.
PlayStation was, it was going to basically be a Sony thing, and with like
Yeah,
a Super Nintendo built into it, and Sony was going to
totally.
get like all of the licensing fees. I don't know. They might have split some of it with Nintendo, but I think they were supposed to get the bulk of it, if not all of it. And I think that's the real reason Nintendo pulled out is,
Yeah.
wait, why are we doing this? And just
Oh,
let
they were
Sony
gonna
have
give way too much to Sony. Yeah,
yeah, they're going to take all the
absolutely.
money. Like we hate this actually, and also the CD thing, the load times. We hate that, and they hated
Yeah.
that through the N64. Um,
Yes.
yeah, I very cool just to see this thing though.
Yeah,
I would look at
rad.
pictures of this device for a long time. Dan, you're in chat. You went to the Super Nintendo or the Nintendo Museum. Did they have? I doubt they have one of these at
Oh,
the
n
Nintendo
oh,
Museum.
I'm sure that this is buried in his
Yeah,
Nintendo's like, "What are you talking about? We never were gonna work with Sony."
right. 'Cause it's a Sony device really, so it just
Yeah,
would not be at the Nintendo Museum.
yeah.
All right. Up next, Hollow Knight Silksong gets surprise mention by Xbox. Will it finally release this year? Is a headline you are allowed to write, but I get it. This is from Liam Doolin at Nintendo Life. It looks like we've got a small update on the status of Hollow Knight Silksong, and this time it comes from the world of Xbox. Fans of this long-awaited title have been given some hope recently with the ID at Xbox director Guy Richards acknowledging how the title is still part of the company's future lineup. Unfortunately, there's no mention of an exact date or time frame as to when it might drop in this latest Xbox Wire post, but hey, plenty of fans seem to appreciate the shout out, regardless. Here's what they said. Xbox said, looking ahead, our lineup is incredible with upcoming games like Claire Obscure Expedition 33, Descenders Next, and FBC Firebreak to play across the whole Xbox universe. And of course, Hollow Knight Silksong 2. Also is what they mean there, not two, like a
Yes,
sequel to
not
Silksong.
to to Silksong, the game that does not exist. It's not
That's right.
real. I know.
Go ahead. I'm just wondering, like,
I
what your
was gonna
initial
say,
reaction is
I
to this.
know that Mike Minotti claims that he has seen and or played some of this
Yeah,
game. I still don't think it's real. I mean,
I don't trust him.
yeah, is Mike Minotti even real? You
I
know, like
ooh,
that's
very
that's
good
the
point.
larger question.
Yeah.
Yeah, uh I I like Hollow Knight. He says in chat, I played it. No, there's no there's yeah, it was a shared hallucination between him and several others, I
Uh-huh.
think. Yeah. So
Yeah, I mean, anyone could say their game was a Hollow Knight Silksong. He just played some like knockoff game or something, and he's been lying to us ever since about it being real. Look, I mean, the whole story here is people freak out when they hear this thing even
I
mentioned in
know.
any official capacity by anyone that has a job at a video game company, and whether that
Yes,
is it
yes.
has nothing to do with the people making the game at Team Cherry. Microsoft
Yeah.
said the game, and are they allowed to do that if it's not coming out soon? It's like, well, yes, they mentioned it a long time ago, and it hasn't come out this entire time. I,
Yeah.
I'm going to continue going back to Team Cherry, as with any creative endeavor and any team that made something that people love and they're following up, they have almost certainly put an entire world of pressure on themselves, and they want to get it perfect. And who can blame them? Because there will be backlash if it's not perfect. There just will be. That's how people
Completely.
are. And so they're trying to avoid that by taking as much time as they possibly can. And Hollow Knight probably ends up making them more than enough money to justify spending as much time as they need on this for the size of team that they are. The game is always selling and it's always on sale, and then
Yeah.
people buy a million more copies all the time. So why not take as much time as possible? But do you think we will be playing this game this year?
No, absolutely not.
Most people agree with you, I think. I saw a poll on YouTube this morning that's like 85% think the game is not coming out this year. I don't know. It's at a certain point, it's like, man, if it's not coming out this year, is it ever really coming out? And I think it's a lot of people are like, no, it's never coming out, and they just don't
I
want to
mean,
believe anymore.
Yeah, I do think that you do bring up an extremely good point about the pressure that
Oh,
is
it's
on
clear.
this game to be spectacular. It's kind of like when a musical artist puts out an album that is just so good from top to bottom, and then they kind of do some side projects
Yep.
and flounder around because there's a lot of pressure for their next album to be perfect. And obviously perfection is not real. It's
Right.
but I do feel for the team that is working on this game.
Yep. Uh, and I also feel for anyone who puts together any sort of showcase for anything because, as always, I'm guilty of it,
Mhm.
just like everyone else. It's like, this is the thing that probably has Hollow Knight Silksong in it. That makes a lot of
Yeah.
sense.
I
And
don't
people are
I
doing that with the Switch 2 Direct now, and I don't blame you. Like,
Yeah.
it could show up there.
Yeah. I just think though that there is a level of underestimating that because there's such a vocal group of critics, and I don't mean that as people who are professionally critics, I mean that as people's whose inclination is to be critical. And we're underestimating, I think, the general public fan base of anything and their desire to enjoy the thing. I think most people who are looking forward to this game are rooting for it to be good as opposed to demanding it to be good. But the people who put the demands of the pressure on are very loud. And so yeah, they found themselves in a challenging position.
Yep. And at a certain point, they're going to have to just tune that out and put out the game. And
Yep.
yeah, but they are also just going to want to take their time. That's clearly where we're
Yep.
at still.
Yep.
Yeah, we'll see. Nintendo Direct in 2 weeks could end up here, or the last time we saw it was at an Xbox show, and it could be at the next Xbox showcase over the summer. Um, if I were them, and it's like if the game is ready, let's just assume it's ready, and they are like looking for the perfect opportunity. Switch 2 launch game for this feels like the best chance to just have the biggest launch imaginable. Like
Yeah.
people would associate it with this new console and they'd be like, oh, I'm going to get the big game. And then I'm
Yeah.
taking home and I'm going to look at the eShop. And the first thing I see is Hollow Knight Silksong is available, ready to go. Yeah, I think
Damn.
that's a good match. But who knows if the game is ready? It very well
I
could
don't
not
know.
be. All right, last couple of headlines here. Assassin's Creed Shadows Day 1 patch seemingly addresses Japanese government concern over destructible shrines. This is from Nicole Carpenter at Polygon. As Assassin's Creed Shadows launches on Thursday, developer Ubisoft snuck in a last-minute patch that makes several adjustments to the game's temples and shrines. The update comes just a day after Japanese politician Hiroyuki Kada brought concerns to Prime Minister Shigeru Ishiba during a government meeting, according to IGN. Kada's concerns, per IGN's translation, are centered on how in-game acts could inspire violence towards shrines in real life. Of course, this is a quote, of course, freedom of expression must be respected, but acts that demean local cultures should be avoided, he said. Ishiba responded that it's something to discuss with Japan's Ministry of Economy, Trade and Industry, the Ministry of Education, Culture, Sports, Science and Technology, and the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, but that the defacement of actual Japanese shrines would not be tolerated. Ubisoft has gone in there, it seems like, and made a day one patch seemingly to address this exact concern. Players will no longer be able to destroy shrines by like hitting it with a sword or running into
Right.
it and things like that.
Yeah.
I mean, here's the thing: you play that game, and all these shrines are replicas of real life shrines, and they have
Yeah.
the history in there where you can like find a little shimmery object. I was talking about this on the Bombcast, and when we were when Sean was playing it, it's how I'm playing it now, is a tool
Yeah.
to learn about Japanese culture and history. And you discover like these things are super important to people, and they have elaborate routines and cultural displays
Yes.
that they go through to show respect to these places. And
Mhm.
I think maybe protecting them in the game is a completely fine choice to be like, no, that these are important to real people,
Yeah.
and we have taken them and borrowed them to make our game feel more alive and more important. And in doing so, let's just make that respect two ways and say, okay, now we're not going to let players be, jerk offs to these things in the game,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Meanwhile, in America, we have GTA,
Yeah.
where
Well,
you can just destroy anything.
to be fair, that is how we want our culture to be treated, I think.
100%.
So
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah, yeah. I think that this,
just trample it, please.
yep.
Yeah. Yeah, the physics interaction in that game are really fun, so I don't blame the developers for being like, well, just we're building everything out of these things that can be broken apart, so we're going to build the temples out of that as well, and not think much more about it beyond that, because they're like, no one's going to really do this maliciously. They're just going to do it because they're, playing the game. And then when someone mentions like, this makes me not feel great, it's, okay, well, that's an easy change to be like, okay, well, we're not trying. That's not what we're going for. Also, this game's in a precarious position with, a lot of people like wanting to be mad at it. So anything they can do to avoid that would be helpful. Have you
Yes.
played this at all?
I haven't. I oversaw a project that we did with Ubisoft around the game. And I had the wonderful Zach Wilson, who tech directs all of the Giant Bomb at Night stuff that we do
Shout out
during
to Zach.
gaming events. He played it, and he wrote the scripts for it and did the VO for it, and he did a
Oh,
fantastic
fantastic.
job. And he said he had a really nice time.
I think it's a good game. It's a good
Yeah.
game. I think some
Yeah.
people are like, it's just fine. I go beyond. I think it is a good, solid, fun open world game. As long as you
Yeah.
know what you're getting from Assassin's Creed, yeah, you should be able to like find the fun there, and there's plenty
Yeah.
of it to be had. The story is routine, and if you come to these games for the story, maybe this isn't the one for you,
Right.
Because that stuff is just very boilerplate. But I
Yeah.
think like here's a revenge story, and then here's a bunch of cool people to kill because you need revenge against them. That works. I think
Fun.
that actually is a pretty positive, or it's a mark in the positive column for me for this game.
Yeah.
All right, last thing here. Switch 2 logo is going to appear on pro baseball teams' jerseys this year. This is from Eddie McCoo at GameSpot.
Whoa.
Nintendo and the Seattle Mariners have been partners for a long time, and the collaboration is expanding in a big way with this year with the professional baseball team adding the Switch 2 logos to its jerseys. As you can see over there in this video,
Yep.
the Mariners are going to begin their season on March 27th, and they will have the Switch 2 logo on I think it was their left shoulder.
Yes.
Right there. This is, if there's a lot of reasons this makes sense. Mariners and Nintendo do have a long history. Hiroshi Yamauchi, the former president of Nintendo, was a minority owner of the Seattle Mariners for a very long time. Nintendo no longer has a stake in the Mariners, but they still have a close partnership. Like, you used to be able to like take your DS to Mariners games and order refreshments, hot dogs and stuff there
on the
you
DS.
connect to the Wi-Fi. They had that sort of a relationship. But it also makes sense because baseball is one of the most popular sports in Japan.
Oh my God, yes.
When the Mariners play the Dodgers and Shohei Ohtani is there, everyone in Japan is going to be watching, and so it's like you're and like there's a ton of Japanese fans of the Mariners as well because Ichiro used to play for them. So it's just there's a lot of reasons that this makes sense, and I'm not surprised to see it. Very cool.
I got to tell you, there is more Dodgers gear in Tokyo because of Ohtani than there is in Los Angeles.
Yep, of course. Yep.
Yeah, I mean, this makes perfect sense. This is cool. I would love to, I would love to see more gaming companies getting involved with professional sports teams because I think that there's a lot of crossover there actually that I think would excite gamers and perhaps entice gamers to be like, oh, baseball is cool or whatever the sport may be. So I'm just saying.
last story. We're speaking of Switch 2. Let's hit this one that someone just shared. Thank you so much, Kane Highwind in chat. This comes from WCCF Tech. And it's Xenoblade Chronicles X Definitive Edition features a hidden 60 frames per second mode. This comes from Francesco DeMaio, I should say, who writes, Xenoblade Chronicles X Definitive Edition has a hidden 60 FPS mode, which suggests the recent game may have been future-proofed ahead of the launch of the Nintendo Switch 2. As confirmed by known modder Massa Grader, this 60 frames per second mode
that have been loaded.
Yeah, I'm sorry, Jan, I can hear that. My bad. The 60 frames per second mode is hidden in the game's executable. Shout outs to Will Smith, and but doesn't function properly, as enabling it causes some unspecified issues. While this mode could be some development left over, it would definitely make more sense if it is a faulty implementation, or if it's a future implementation that could be featured on the Switch 2. That this makes, if you're releasing a game right now, you know what the Switch 2 is, and we know it's backward compatible.
100%.
This sounds like the exact kind of thing that just ends up being like unlocked on the Switch 2 and just works, right?
Completely. Yeah. No, I totally agree. I mean, look, Nintendo, they like to live in their own timeline. But one of the things that the Switch 2 is definitely going to have to be able to do is 60 FPS. So there you go. Just put it on Switch 2 and it'll work.
Yep, exactly. And it's like it's already got like dynamic resolution, so it's like this game should be able to run at like a consistent 720p on handheld mode or 1080p on when docked, which it's probably not doing now. And then maybe also 60 frames per second as well in this mode that doesn't really function. It's weird on Switch 1, but maybe it's weird on Switch 1 because it makes more sense for Switch 2, or maybe it is a development leftover and it won't work at all. That's also a possibility. I don't want to get people's hopes up, but if I'm buying Xenoblade Chronicles X Definitive Edition right now for the Switch 1, I'm doing so with the expectation that it's going to run better on the Switch 2. I think that's a fair expectation to have.
I think that's a completely fair expectation to have.
All right, and then let's see. Dr. Ryan's got one more for me, and then we'll wrap up everybody. Let's see here. 2 year. Okay, so it says someone found the registration of a Persona 4 remake website this morning. That feels inevitable.
That feels right. That's inevitable.
Every time someone mentions that game came out on PS2 originally, like, every time I say that, it drives me crazy. That can't be true, but it is.
Yeah. I mean, it's had a new life, obviously, with Persona 4 Golden.
Of course, yes.
But I mean, it's due for the Persona 5. Like they did with Persona 3 Reload. It's basically due for that treatment being, Persona 5ified. I think that, as you say, that is inevitable. And I am curious because obviously I remember there was a lot of conversation, particularly because that Muso Persona 5 came to the Switch and it was announced it was coming to the Switch, but you couldn't play Persona 5 on the Switch at the time. So I'm curious if this is a Switch title, but also obviously we know that there's that ongoing partnership with Atlas and Game Pass. So yeah, I'm curious. I'm curious to see where this all ends up.
Me too, and I'm curious to see the results of our poll from yesterday, which was, who do you want to play as in Sonic Racing Cross Worlds? Sonic, Shadow, Cream the Rabbit, or Danica Patrick? And 44% went with Danica Patrick, 27% went with Cream the Rabbit, 17% went with Shadow, and 11% went with Sonic, which just goes to show you that polls are not reliable, because the data from Sega yesterday said the exact opposite. It was number 1 was Sonic, number 2 was Shadow, number 3 was Cream the Rabbit, cream and cheese apparently, and then Danica Patrick's not in the game, I don't think so. So there you go. But most people in the Giant Bomb audience want to represent Danica, apparently. All right, new poll question here in a second. Before we get to that, Emma Fyffe, why don't you tell people where they can find you on the internet, what work you have going on, or where they can catch you anywhere?
I'm on Blue Sky at Emma Fyffe. I still need to get my EmmaFyffe.com situated there, but for now, just look Emma Fyffe. There's me. I'm sort of back on Instagram. I don't really look at it very much. I just generally am not super participating in social media, and it's real nice. I got lots of, if you click on those fandom.coms, chances are you will see my face in a video, because I've done a lot of things for our partners and gaming news thing for Verizon that might still be running. We got a H&R Block thing that's running, but I think that might be in Canada, where I previously mentioned that I played The Sims. It was really fun. It was me and M. Montgomery, aka Nega Oryx, who's a wonderful, wonderful Sims player and just has a cool, lovely community. But yeah, I mean, I'm around. You guys you'll find me.
Well, hopefully we'll find you back here on Monday, right?
Absolutely.
I think we'll kind of get back to the normal schedule.
Yeah, we'll get back to the normal schedule. Yeah.
Everyone can relax and be like, okay, no, it actually is Monday.
It really is Monday.
The next time.
It will really be not this time. It's Thursday.
Still not Monday yet. Yes, exactly. All right. New poll question. Babe, can you hold off on doing that, kiddo, until we're done, and then I'll get the batteries for you. Have you ever played Plants vs. Zombies? Yes or no? Kind of just see what our audience says. I imagine most people probably have. And you can answer this however you want. That could also mean Garden Warfare if you needed to mean that. Just say yes to this. I expect Garden Warfare to return as well. That's a franchise that just always had way more popularity than I ever realized. All right, we'll get that poll question answered on tomorrow's show here on Giant Bomb and GameSpot for the Power Block. Game Breaking News will return then at noon Eastern, 9 a.m. Pacific. In the meantime, let's see, what else do we have going on? It's Thursday, so I think we should have something happen with the GameSpot crew. They've been at GDC all week, so I think the plan was throw some GDC stuff into this next block. I don't know. We'll see what it is. And then later today, the voicemail dump truck will be happening. That is today, right, Jan? I think so. I think next week is the one where we might not be doing it on Thursday. All right. In the meantime, thank you all for watching and listening. Emma Fyffe, thank you so much for hanging out with me and talking about video games. I really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
We'll catch you all next time. Until then, have a good one. Take care of yourself, and goodbye.